Well, hello, and thank you so much for being here in my home city of Brighton and Hove, and where I hope to have the privilege of representing my neighbours in Parliament after the 4th of July. Now, thank you. Now, before I hand over to Carla and Adrian to officially launch our manifesto, I wanted to tell you about one of the reasons I chose to stand in this election and why I joined the Greens in the first place. I'm a renter. I have been all my adult life. And for the most part, I've been really safe in the flats I've rented and I've got by. I've had pretty decent landlords and no major problems over the years. But I have in the past really struggled to pay the rent. In general, I've been very lucky though, but for renters up and down this country, the huge expense and uncertainty of renting is something that keeps them up at night all of the time. Here in Brighton and Hove, our former MP, Caroline Lucas, has told me about her constituency inbox, and it's filled with residents calling for something, anything to be done to help them off the rental roller coaster. There's damp. There's mould, there's properties in disrepair, the very real risk for everyone of eviction at a moment's notice, and high rents rising all the time. I've been lucky, but I also know I'm still basically at the mercy of a system that could turn on me at any moment. So this is one of the reasons I so badly want to be a Green MP among a group of us, because the system needs changing and we would do so much to help change it. Now, 5 years ago, the Conservatives promised to end no-fault evictions, just one of their many broken promises, and the very least that's needed. The number of stories I hear of people having to leave their homes without a good reason, often with only weeks to work out what to do next, it's really shocking and it has a huge impact. Along with the wider crisis in renting, this is destroying lives. Figures from Shelter reveal nearly 140,000 children now living in temporary accommodation, many after their families lost a rented home. And in a society as rich as ours, it's a scandal that these children are losing their health and even dying because of the dire quality of these homes. And that children are still every day being made homeless through eviction to put them in that position. We can't allow this to continue. Greens are proud of our policy to help end the crisis in rented housing by introducing rent controls. Decided locally and based on what the housing market looks like in the local community, this would allow all of us to make sure rents are affordable and stay connected with local earnings. Our fair deal for renters isn't a pipe dream, and it is not difficult to achieve. What we are offering in our manifesto is a plan to make renting fairer, change the balance of power fairly, so that renters don't simply feel they have to live at someone else's mercy. Carla and Adrian will tell you more shortly about why we're so proud of our manifesto as a whole, but I can sum it up from my point of view too. Along with other issues that matter here in Brighton and Hove, the state of our water, mending our broken public services, and especially defending our NHS, ending the housing crisis is right at the top of what people tell me they need. Brighton rents last year rose faster than almost anywhere else. But wherever you are, having a home to live in where you feel secure and safe is a basic building block of life, and something we should all have as a right. As Greens, standing in this election, we all have a strong commitment to making this right a reality. Now, it's a real pleasure to hand over to our co-leaders, Carla and Adrian, for them to introduce the rest of our manifesto, a manifesto filled with real hope and real change for our country. Carla and Adrian.
you so much, Sian, and it's so lovely to be here in Brighton and Hove with you. The wonderful thing about being a politician is you get to have conversations with people in your local community. Those thousands of conversations with people in hundreds of different places have brought us to where we are today, with a shiny new manifesto ready to be unveiled. Our manifesto is based on investing to mend broken Britain and offer real hope and real change.
Our manifesto is about the sort of country we want to live in, where we move beyond the politics of fear and distrust, the sort of safe and brighter future we want to build for our children, the sort of world we want to build together, a world where everyone has access to the health services they need, everyone has a warm and secure home, and we all have clean air to breathe. Our offer to voters is real hope and real change. And our manifesto lays out exactly what that will look like. This manifesto isn't more of the same. It's a look at what things could be like, and soon, if we're willing to invest at the rate necessary and to be bold and ambitious. We reject the pessimism of the other parties, who don't believe we can safeguard our publicly funded health system, that we can't provide warm and secure homes for everyone, that tackling the climate crisis is too challenging for us. We reject this pessimism. We're confident that our vision for the future of the country is one that most people share. Our manifesto tells you, that it is possible.
We plan to transform our economy for good. We can't go on with an economy where most people are working harder and yet getting poorer, while inequality keeps growing. We reject an economy based on unfairness and instead embrace a fairer, greener economy. Our manifesto lays out a bold but simple plan to bring our water companies, our railways and the big 5 retail energy companies into public ownership. We would end... This would end the rip-off of rising bills, appalling service and shareholders trousering millions. We would restore our ailing high streets too, urban and rural, and recognise their value to the communities they serve by investing in support for small and medium-sized businesses. We would overhaul our tax system to make it fairer. At the heart of this would be a tax on the very richest, the top 1% of people, requiring them to pay a bit more into the pot. From the Tories and Labour, we've been hearing a race to the bottom on tax. They think 2 pence off here and a penny off there will impress voters, and they think that people won't cotton on that this means even more devastating cuts to public services like the NHS that we rely on every day. But that's not what we're hearing. On the doorstep, people are telling us they want something to be done about the state of our public services, about our broken Britain. They think there just must be a way to fix it. And voters in this country know that to mend broken Britain, we have to invest in our future. Greens have the courage to say that we would change the tax system to make it fairer and make this investment possible. And they're right, because here it is, a plan that would see billions go into the country's collective pocket to pay for the future of our public services.
Like the National Health Service, a cornerstone of everything we hold dear in our country. We launched our NHS offer last week, and we were so proud to hear the feedback from NHS workers. They felt that someone, finally, was willing to take the action needed to support them and the critical work they do every day. An investment of £50 billion, more than any other party, in health and social care to defend and restore the NHS. We would ensure that you can see a GP rapidly and on the same day if it's urgent. We would guarantee an NHS dentist for everyone. We would make personal social care free at the point of use, like the NHS. We would bring mental health treatment up to the same standard as physical health, and unlike any other party, we would say a categorical no to privatisation in our health service.
Sian has spoken about the severe insecurity in our rental market, the unaddressed crisis in housing. As well as our support for renters, we would provide genuinely affordable housing through our Right Homes, Right Place, Right Price charter and create 150,000 new social homes every year by the end of the next Parliament. Unlike Labour, we would end the right to buy scheme that takes so many homes that are needed out of circulation. Yeah. And we'd tackle our energy bills too. Our energy bills are still sky high because we have the worst insulated homes in Europe. So over a 5-year period, we would invest £30 billion in insulating homes up and down the country to reduce emissions and bring energy bills down for good, so people aren't afraid to put the heating on when winter rolls around. Because a warm, secure, affordable home is something that millions of people in this country don't have. But it is so important, a basic building block for a happy and successful life.
Now, if you look at the other parties, the climate crisis has been pretty much absent from this election campaign so far. The other parties are running away from their promises on climate. Only the Greens understand that the solutions to the climate crisis are also the solutions to the cost of living crisis. The climate crisis is the most serious we face as a global community. Our commitment to you is that protecting our climate and nature lies at the heart of all of our policies. We won't give you fake numbers or spin the data, but we will strive every single day to take the action that's needed. So what are we promising? We would stop all new fossil fuel projects in the UK and cancel those that have been recently licensed, like Rosebank. We would be more ambitious than any other party when it comes to renewable energy, investing to ensure that our energy can come from wind and solar power. A secure energy supply and action on the climate crisis go hand in hand. Our investment in public transport, support to switch to electric vehicles and homes heated without fossil fuels means we would put this country on path to being net zero years ahead of other parties. The science is clear. The desire from voters is clear. Now we need representatives in Parliament who are ambitious enough to make it a reality.
There is so much more in our manifesto that we are proud of. Plans to clean up our water companies once and for all by bringing them back into public ownership. A commitment to scrap tuition fees so our young people aren't burdened with debt for life. And increasing the budget for schools so teachers don't have to choose between books and biros. And a new Clean Air Act to safeguard our children's health. Now is the moment to be ambitious. Not unrealistic, but ambitious, to be clear about the kind of country we want to live in, about how broken our public services are and the action that's needed to fix them. Because we can have an NHS that works. We can have an economy that benefits everyone, not just the very richest. We can have affordable housing that's actually affordable. Think of that. We can have real hope and real change for the future.
Now, we're not expecting to form the next government. We're realistic about that too. But when the Conservatives are booted out of number 10 on the 4th of July, and Labour take over, we plan to be there in Parliament in greater numbers to speak up for you on the issues you care about, like a revitalised NHS, bold action on the climate and a fair economy. Because with more Green MPs in Parliament, we will push Labour to stop backtracking on their promises. We will be there to drive them to be braver, to be more ambitious, not to take timid baby steps towards change, but to actually do what's necessary to fix our country and get us back on track. So this is our offer to voters, a manifesto that lays out exactly what real hope and real change looks like. An ambitious but realistic plan for the future that we can all be proud of.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got 15 minutes now to take questions from the floor before our leaders and our spokespeople will be available for a one-to-one. If you can introduce yourself and say what outlet you're from before you ask your question, that would be really useful. And if you can keep your questions as short as possible.
Helen Cat from the BBC. Hello. You've talked about being honest about needing to put in a lot of investment here, but there is a lot of... Oh, can you not hear me? Hang on. I'll try that. Okay. You've talked about being honest about needing to put in a lot of investment here, but there is a lot of spending in this manifesto. 40 billion a year for the green economy, 50 billion for health and for the NHS. There are also other things in here that are quite expensive, like increases to benefits. Are you really being honest that you can definitely raise all of this to do everything in this manifesto?
Yes, we absolutely are. Our manifesto is fully costed. A lot of work has gone into it over many months. I think that the Green Party was actually more ready for this general election than some of the other parties from the look of it. We've got more parliamentary candidates standing than the Conservative Party, for example. Yeah, we obviously voters and viewers can pore over our manifesto in detail now, but yes, we do have some ambitious spending commitments, and the Greens are the only party being honest that that's the level of investment needed to get the kind of public services we need in this country, and we're not shy about talking about the changes to the tax system, which would take the onus off those on the lowest incomes and put it on those with the broadest shoulders who can most afford to pay a little bit extra for the public services that benefit everyone.
Hi, thanks very much. Gurpreet Narwan from Sky News. The changes to national insurance mean that people earning over £50,000 a year will be paying more tax. That's 1 in 5 taxpayers. How do you justify that in a cost of living crisis? And secondly, 3 years ago you were talking about abolishing national insurance altogether, so why the U-turn?
Thank you very much for the question. So we've got a range of proposals on tax and spending that are about helping those on the lowest incomes through this cost of living crisis, but also taking action on the root causes of the cost of living crisis that will support all of us, including people on middle incomes that you have referred to. So we're looking to raise funding that will enable us to address the fact that energy and food prices have gone so high through things like a nationwide programme to insulate our homes, supporting farmers to produce more of our food locally, really address those issues. And also, if more people are able to access an NHS dentist and be part of the NHS in the way that we've talked about by putting that investment in, fewer people will be thinking about going private with the costs that are involved in that. So there will be financial benefits, including for people on the sorts of incomes that you've talked about. Specifically on the national insurance proposal, that the cost of that for somebody on £55,000 a year would be an extra £5 a week. People earning under 50,000 would not be affected. So we are asking modestly more, but we think it's, for people on middle incomes, a modest amount that's affordable, and that is going to enable us to invest in the health services, in the changes to a green economy that are going to benefit us all and create a fairer society.
Hi, Rhiannon James from PA. You say ending the housing crisis is a top priority, but are you willing to put this above the green belt? I understand you want to achieve 150,000 council homes, but can this be achieved without impacting the green belt?
So the Green Party is prioritising the housing crisis. You've heard Sian talk about how severely this crisis is affecting people in Brighton and Hove. In my home city of Bristol, it's similar. Nearly half of people living in my constituency of Bristol Central are living in private rented accommodation, and the cost of a one-bed flat in Bristol has roughly doubled since I moved to the city 15 years ago, and I'm sure we can all attest that average salaries have not doubled in that time. There is no single solution to a housing crisis. It has to be a mixture of different measures. So that does include giving councils the power to bring in rent controls in areas where the market is overheated, but we do need more homes too. We're going to be going for creating 150,000 new social homes a year by the end of the Parliament, and that will be through a mixture of building and buying from the private sector in certain kinds of properties. Now, that buying the supply of social homes is something that several London Borough Councils are already doing. So it can already be done in the current circumstances. We would make it easier for councils to do that by giving them first right of refusal on certain types of properties, like properties that were right to bide out of public hands. If those are going back on the private market, councils would have first dibs on those. So yes, there will be some new build, and for those, they have to be to the prioritising brownfield, of course, and built to the highest possible sustainability credentials. But it's also about bringing existing properties into public hands to provide affordable housing for as many people as possible.
Hi, Jasmine Cameron-Shaleshi from ITV News. Former Just Stop Oil donor Dale Vince has said it would be a mistake to vote Green, as Labour is one of only two parties that could form a Green government. What's your response to his remarks? And just quickly on your housing policy, you're calling for around £29 billion to be spent on insulating homes. Can you talk us through who will bear the cost of this? Is that local authorities? Is that individuals? And how will it work in practice? Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So on your first question, we've seen Keir Starmer make many U-turns, both on funding for public services and also on climate. You remember Labour was proposing a £28 billion spend in this next Parliament on the transition to a green economy. That was not enough, but they were pledging it, and they U-turned on that. I think I've only heard £8 billion from them. We're the ones being honest about the levels of investment that's needed, and the polls suggest that, yes, we're on track for a Labour government, but if Keir Starmer has a huge majority, then he'll be able to U-turn continually in the way that he has been. If we have a big group of Green MPs there to push them in the right direction, we will be able to push Labour to be bolder both on climate and on investment in our public services. So that's why we're urging people across the country to vote Green and working to get Green MPs elected, particularly in our target seats.
And just on the insulating home scheme.
On insulating. So there is a need for substantial public investment on insulating homes. It won't all need to come from the public sector. So our approach will be obviously local authorities supported by government taking responsibility for insulating council housing. And then there will be a mixture of grants and affordable privately provided but government-backed property-linked finance available to those who can afford the repayments. And those will be available for owner-occupiers and also for landlords of private rented properties.
Hi, Joseph Draper from LBC. You've acknowledged today you're probably not going to form the next government, but I just wondered how you expect to ever be taken seriously as a political party when you're still campaigning to remove nuclear weapons, given that we've got a Russian tyrant threatening Europe's eastern border. How do you expect to be taken seriously as a potential government if you're still campaigning on an issue which most of the public really don't agree with?
Well, thank you for the question, Joseph. So many people who have got a long history in the military have been clear that the investment in nuclear weapons is not a good use of public funds, that it's an outdated system, and even Michael Portillo, when he was Defence Secretary, said very similar. We need to make sure that the money we're putting into defence is used effectively on personnel, on the great work that our army does for humanitarian work around the world, and which we can continue to step up. So this is about making good use of that funding and not investing in an outdated system.
Thank you very much. Josiah Mortimer from Byline Times. There's lots of policies in here which I think could fairly be described as left-wing, but obviously the Green Party have won a lot of councillors off Conservatives in recent years. Would both of you still describe the Green Party as a proudly left-wing party to the left of Keir Starmer's Labour? And secondly, the phrase right homes, right places. The Greens have come under some previous criticism in places like Bristol for opposing quite a large number of housing developments. Is there not a risk that right homes, right places will be just perceived as a cover for alleged NIMBYism? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josiah. Look, you only have to look at our policies to see that the Green Party has a progressive policy platform, that we're the ones saying that we will put the investment that's needed into our public health services. We're the ones that will stop the water companies continuing to profit from failure when they should be investing in our water infrastructure. And I think those policies are popular with the general public. I think most people don't think in terms of labels, but in terms of what's needed to tackle the root causes of the problems in our society, whether that be sewage in our rivers, whether that be lack of investment in the NHS, or whether that be the need for more affordable homes. So we're putting forward the policies that are needed. We need that progressive voice in the next Parliament to push Labour to be bolder. And you're absolutely right to highlight that with the huge success we've had in the last 5 years, where we've increased the number of elected Greens in England and Wales fivefold, we have been winning seats in roughly equal numbers from Labour and from the Conservatives in rural areas and urban areas, from young voters and old voters. It shows people that we have that wide range of public support, that people value what Greens bring to political life. And I think people are interested in the policies that we're putting forward.
So I'll pick up the part about housing, as you mentioned Bristol. I guess I would start by just saying be careful about believing everything you read in a Labour Party press release. I am aware that Labour are telling journalists that Greens vote against housing developments. I think they think that's a great line they've got over us. But in fact, a local journalist in Bristol, where I'm based, after hearing me being asked about this, did a comprehensive fact-checking exercise of the different examples of housing developments in Bristol that were cited in the BBC interview. It turns out half of them hadn't even been to planning committee yet, so the Greens hadn't had an opportunity to vote either way. And on the rest, it had been because Greens had voted against a particular application because, for example, it didn't have enough affordable housing. And I think voters would expect Green elected representatives, all of their elected representatives, to make an intelligent, evidence-based, case-by-case decision on individual planning applications. Of course we want more affordable, good quality, low-carbon housing. You can look at Green-run councils to see that we've prioritised that. Greens had the housing portfolio in York for 4 years, and in that time got several low-carbon housing developments with large proportions affordable that were multi-award-winning. Likewise in Stroud, where Greens have been in administration for over 10 years, building more council housing and retrofitting the existing council housing to be more energy efficient has been a really core plank of their policies. So by all means, judge us on our work. But be wary when you get a press release that cherry picks 5 examples out of what must, given the number of councillors we have now, be tens of thousands of planning votes.
Ladies and gentlemen, questions, and then we're going to draw it for a close.
Katie Ray, BBC News. Why do you think there's been a problem with some Green candidates? Is it a failure of the party's vetting process, or is there a deeper problem of anti-Semitism within certain parts of the party, or is it both? And a second question, if I may. We heard that Rishi Sunak went without Sky TV as a child. What did you guys go without as children?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, remind me of the first one. You distracted me with the amusement of the second one there.
Why do you think there's been a problem with some Green candidates? Is it a failure of your party's vetting process, or is there a wider issue of anti-Semitism in the party, or both?
Thank you. So, as Carla said, we are standing more candidates in England and Wales than the Conservatives. We're standing 574 Green candidates, a record number and an example of how we're more prepared for this election than ever before, and more prepared than even the Conservatives. You'd have thought they'd have known there was going to be an election, wouldn't you? And so across those 574 candidates, there have been 4 who were originally put forward who are now not standing as a result of questions that were raised and that were then investigated around things that they had said. 4 out of 574. So like any other party, if issues are raised around a candidate, those are investigated. That process happens independently of the party leadership, as is a matter of good governance. And those 4 candidates have been replaced by other candidates. So we're now standing right across the country. We're going into this election bold and confident with our manifesto, as we've announced today. Candidates are right across the country, and a laser-like focus on those seats where we've got a fantastic chance of winning on the 4th of July, particularly in Brighton Pavilion, in Bristol Central, in Waveney Valley and in North Herefordshire, where we're focusing our efforts on the ground to make sure that we can beat the other parties and we can have a group of Green MPs in the next Parliament to push the next government to be bolder, whether it's on the climate crisis or on funding for our health services.
Oh, and your question about Sky TV.
What did you go without as children?
Well, I also went without Sky TV. My family home just had terrestrial TV for most of my childhood, and my parents had second-hand cars for most of my childhood as well. So, I'm not sort of trying to elicit any tears here. I had a fairly comfortable childhood, but certainly not a luxurious one.
I would say similar, really. If I had a fairly modest upbringing, we had what we needed. I went without a pet for a large amount of my childhood until I eventually persuaded my family otherwise, but did get there in the end, which went a long way in terms of being an animal lover. But didn't have Sky TV either.
I think we've got time for one last question.
Hi there, Amy Gibbons from The Telegraph. You've said you want to scrap the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act and also the Public Order Act. I'm interested, would you also repeal any sentences for climate protesters, sentences or penalties?
Personally, I don't think that it is right for politicians to intervene in individual cases, but we are clear that these bills that have been brought in by the Conservative government over the last few years are disproportionate. The laws that we need to enforce peaceful protest were already there, and the consequences of these more stricter legislation restricts freedom of speech. It restricts peaceful protest, which the Greens, I think, unlike other parties, are clear there is a role for peaceful protest in a healthy democracy, and you only have to look at countries. You only have to look at countries where protest is clamped down upon to see the chilling effect that has on democracy and on society at large.
Thank you to everyone for coming today. Straight away after this now, we're going to have one still photo opportunity. So that just gives us a minute or two to set that up, and then anyone who wants to is very welcome to take advantage of that. We've then got a busy schedule of one-to-one interviews with our leaders